true. Most of us grow up believing that love is about being easy to love. If you're kind enough, patient enough, agreeable enough, everything should work out, right? But here's the truth no one really talks about. The strongest relationships aren't built on how much you give. They're built on how honest you're willing to be. And that kind of honesty, it's uncomfortable. It asks us to be vulnerable, even when every part of us wants to armor up. But the relationships that matter most, whether it's a partner, a friend, or family, are the ones where we have the courage to show up fully, messy parts and all. And there are a few truths about connection that, if I'm being honest, I wish someone had told me a lot sooner. First, clarity is kindness. Most of us avoid hard conversations because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. We sugarcoat, we tiptoe, or worse, we say nothing at all and hope people can read our minds. But here's the thing. Unspoken expectations are premeditated resentment. When you aren't clear about what you need, how you feel, or what you expect, you create a breeding ground for disappointment, and I get it. Being clear is hard. It's vulnerable. It means saying, this matters to me, or I need this from you, and risking that the other person won't meet you there. But the alternative? The alternative is even harder, because when we stay quiet, we don't avoid conflict, we just delay it. And in the meantime, we sit in our own frustration, quietly keeping score. I remember talking to someone who told me I shouldn't have to tell them what I need. They should just know. And look, I understand where that comes from. We want the people we love to be so tuned into us that they can read our minds. But here's the truth. No one can meet a need you refuse to name. And the people who love us, they're usually trying. But if you're waiting for someone to guess what you need, you'll spend a lot of time feeling unseen. In fact, research shows that the most connected relationships have one thing in common: clear, honest communication, not passive-aggressive hints, not silent assumptions, just clarity. And I know there's a part of us that thinks being clear is harsh, but it's not. Clarity is one of the kindest things you can offer another person. It says, I respect you enough to be honest with you, and I trust you enough to tell you the truth. But here's where it gets tricky. We avoid clarity because we don't want to be too much. We tell ourselves, if I ask for what I need, I'm being difficult. Or if I'm honest, they might leave. So instead we swallow our words. We pretend we're fine. And every time we do that, we trade authenticity for approval. But the cost of that trade, it's high. Because when you silence yourself long enough, you eventually start to feel invisible in your own relationships. I learned this the hard way. I spent years convincing myself that being easygoing was the key to being loved. I would bend myself into whatever shape the relationship needed, smiling when I wanted to speak up, nodding when I disagreed, because I thought being agreeable was the price of connection. But the truth is, you can't build a meaningful relationship on a foundation of silence. You can't be fully loved if you're not fully known. And here's what I know now. When we choose clarity, we set people up to succeed with us. We give them the information they need to love us well. And that doesn't mean you'll always get what you want. Sometimes you'll be met with misunderstanding. Sometimes people won't be able to give you what you're asking for. But I would rather know the truth and grieve it than sit in the uncertainty of wondering, do they even care? So what does this look like in real life? It looks like saying, hey, I need more support right now, instead of hoping someone will notice your struggle. It looks like when you said that it hurt, instead of pretending you're fine. And sometimes it sounds like, I care about you, but I can't keep doing this, instead of staying quiet and building quiet resentment. And if you're thinking, well, I'm not good at this, you're not alone. Most of us weren't taught how to have hard conversations. But like anything else, it's a practice. It's about being willing to fumble your way through the discomfort, because the alternative, disconnection, hurts a lot more. The next time you find yourself hesitating to speak up, ask yourself this: am I staying quiet to keep the peace, or am I choosing silence because it's easier than being honest? If it's the latter, take a breath and say the thing. Your relationships and your sense of self are too important to settle for anything less. Second, love without boundaries isn't love, it's control. It sounds romantic, doesn't it? That idea of giving everything for someone you love. We're told from an early age that love means sacrifice. That if you care enough, you'll bend, stretch, and give without limits. And sure, love requires generosity. It asks us to show up, to offer kindness, to make room for someone else's needs. But there's a fine line between generosity and self-abandonment. And when love comes without boundaries, it stops being love. It becomes something else entirely, something that feels heavy, exhausting, and over time, unsustainable. Here's the truth most of us don't want to face. When you love someone without boundaries, you're not really giving them your heart. You're giving them control over it. And I'm not talking about the kind of control that's obvious or manipulative. I mean the subtle ways we start handing over pieces of ourselves to avoid conflict or rejection. It looks like saying yes when everything inside you is screaming no. It looks like tolerating behavior that chips away at your dignity because you're afraid to lose the relationship. And let's be honest, sometimes it feels easier to blur those lines, especially when you love someone deeply. There's this quiet fear that if you set a boundary, if you draw a clear line, they might walk away. So we tell ourselves that being flexible is the price we pay for love. But here's the reality. Any relationship that requires you to disappear to keep it intact isn't love. It's fear in disguise. I've been there. I know what it's like to twist yourself into a version of who you think someone wants you to be. To quiet your needs because you don't want to rock the boat, and for a while it works, or at least it looks like it does. But underneath that, something else is happening. Resentment starts to build. You feel unseen, unheard, and eventually unrecognizable to yourself. Because every time you abandon yourself to keep the peace, you lose a little more of who you are. Boundaries aren't about shutting people out. They're about making room for honest, healthy connection. They're how we protect what matters most: our integrity, our emotional well-being, our self-respect. And here's the thing. People who love you, really love you, won't leave because you set a boundary. The ones who do, they were benefiting from your lack of them. One of the biggest myths about boundaries is that they're selfish, but the opposite is true. Boundaries allow you to love people better because they keep you from loving them with resentment, simmering under the surface. Without them, we give out of obligation instead of joy, and nobody wants to be on the receiving end of that kind of love. It doesn't feel real. It feels like guilt wrapped in affection. So, what does it look like to practice boundaries in your relationship? It starts with understanding that boundaries are not a punishment. They're a way of being honest. It sounds like saying, I love you, but I can't keep having this same conversation without change. It sounds like I care about you, but I need space right now. It's recognizing that you can hold compassion for someone and still hold limits around what you will and won't tolerate. And it's not just about the words. It's about the follow-through. A boundary without consequences is just a suggestion. If you tell someone how you want to be treated, but nothing changes when they cross the line, you're not setting a boundary, you're making an empty request. And I know that's hard. I know it's terrifying to say, this is where I draw the line, especially when you care deeply. But the truth is, you can't change what you're unwilling to confront. If you're sitting here thinking, I've let too much slide, or I don't even know where to start, you're not alone. Most of us were never taught how to set healthy boundaries. But it's never too late to begin. Start small. Choose one place where you feel overextended or unseen and ask yourself, what do I need here? What am I no longer willing to tolerate? And when you have the answer, speak it out loud, not in anger, not in blame, but in truth. Because at the end of the day, real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't demand that you sacrifice your dignity to keep it alive. The people who truly belong in your life will respect the lines you draw, and the ones who don't, you're better off without them. Third, trust isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the small moments. Most of us think about trust like a light switch. Either you have it or you don't. But in reality, trust doesn't happen all at once. It's not some big sweeping moment where everything falls into place. Trust is built or broken, slowly, over time, in the smallest, most ordinary moments. I once had someone ask me, how do I rebuild trust after it's been broken? And that's the thing. There's no shortcut. There's no grand apology or one-time gesture that magically repairs everything. What rebuilds trust is consistency. It's showing up over and over in the small ways that say, you matter to me. And if that sounds simple, it is, but it's not easy because small things, they require effort, they require presence, and they're easy to overlook when we're busy or distracted. Think about the people you trust the most. Odds are it's not because they did one amazing thing. It's because time after time, they showed you that you could count on them. It's the friend who remembers to check in when you're struggling. It's the partner who follows through on the little promises, like calling when they say they will. It's the person who listens not to fix or correct, but just to be there with you. Those moments may seem small, but over time they add up. They become the foundation of trust. And the reverse is true too. Trust erodes the same way, bit by bit. It's the little betrayals that eat away at the foundation, the forgotten commitments, the half-truths, the moments when someone looks the other way when you needed them most. And the hardest part, most trust isn't lost in explosive betrayals. It slips away in the quiet, unnoticed breaks. I remember a conversation I had with someone who said, I didn't mean to hurt them. It was just a small thing. But here's the truth. Small things are never small when they touch someone's heart. If it matters to the other person, it should matter to you. And when we dismiss those moments as no big deal, what we're really saying is your feelings don't matter enough for me to pay attention. That's what breaks trust, not just the action, but the message underneath it. One of the biggest misconceptions about trust is that it's all about honesty. And honesty matters, but it's not the whole story. Trust is about reliability. It's about knowing that if you fall apart at 2 a.m., there's someone who will pick up the phone. It's about believing that when you share the messiest parts of yourself, they won't turn away. And it's also about integrity, because trust is built when people do what they say they will do, even when it's inconvenient. I know this isn't easy, especially if you've been hurt before. It's hard to trust again when you've been let down. And sometimes the most terrifying thing we can do is believe that someone will stay when so many others have left. But here's the thing. When we shut ourselves off from trust, we shut ourselves off from connection. And without connection, we're just going through the motions. If you're wondering, how do I know who to trust? Start small. Pay attention to how people show up in the ordinary moments. Do they listen without judgment? Do they follow through on the things they promise, even when no one's watching? Are they willing to have hard conversations instead of avoiding them? Trustworthy people don't just say the right things, they live them. And if you're on the other side, if you're trying to rebuild trust with someone you love, be patient. Trust doesn't return in one moment of regret. It comes back piece by piece when you prove through your actions that you're safe again. And when you feel frustrated by how long it takes, remind yourself of this. Every small act of trust building matters. Even when it feels invisible, it's doing the work of repair. At the end of the day, trust isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. It's not about never messing up. It's about owning it when you do. And the people who are worth trusting, they'll show you over time that you don't have to do this alone. Fourth, you can't love others well if you're betraying yourself. We talk a lot about trust in relationships, trusting others, earning trust, rebuilding it when it's broken. But there's another kind of trust we don't talk about enough, self-trust. And here's the truth. If you abandon yourself over and over again to keep someone else happy, it's only a matter of time before that